look at young Dinek. Some of them have already lost their...
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm back with another Metal Gear Solid 5 Phantom Pain, and yeah, it's been a while. You know, I've been busy with work, and you know, there's just too much stuff I'm doing right now. So yeah, and this is the only time I'll be able to record. So yeah, well, it's like 5 in the morning, and yeah, so yeah. So last episode I did To Know Too Much and C2W, and yeah, I think that's the only things I did. Oh, and I also recovered the AI pod and the Man on Fire, which happens to be Vulcan. No surprise there. And yeah, so let's continue on.
Mission list updated. Development project has been added.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm in the quarantine platform. Okay. Well, let's get back. Oh, rewards. Okay. Okay, let's get back on the chopper.
Roger.
All right, let's see the missions.
Please select a mission.
Back up, back down, extreme, cursed legacy. Oh yeah, that's right. I need to do this one, and total stealth, footprints of phantoms, and extreme traders caravan. Total stealth missions like this one is pretty damn hard, especially if you don't have the right equipment. Yeah. So, yeah. So for now, let's just do the cursed legacy.
Mission accepted.
Let's go here.
Heading to Central Africa.
Actually, no. Let's go up here.
Heading to Central Africa.
All right. So, okay. Let's go at nighttime, just to be a little more easier.
Deploying.
Episode 35, Cursed Legacy. Oh, I forgot to play the briefing tape. Damn.
Boss, Code Talker's research has been stolen. The research materials have been packed into 2 containers and hidden in the jungle southwest of the mansion. Enemy extraction choppers will be there any minute. You have to find and retrieve those containers before they arrive. That area is being guarded by zero-risk security, and their client is XOF. If the choppers make off with the containers, that research will end up in Cypher's hands. That cannot be allowed to happen. One other thing, boss. We need a cargo-capable Fulton extraction device to recover the containers. Use your iDroid to order its development and have it dropped in.
Well, I already have them, so...
Be careful down there, boss!
The map has been updated.
Anyway, play the briefing tape.
Boss, research materials have been stolen from Code Talker's mansion. The materials were packed into 2 containers and hidden in the jungle southwest of the mansion. You have to recover those containers. The pickup crew coming for those documents is none other than XOF. That's right. They're still active, even after Skullface's death. Now that he's no longer in charge, their original chain of command has been restored. Meaning if XOF gets those documents, Code Talker's research ends up in Cypher's hands. According to Code Talker, the research papers stored in that mansion account for over 50 years of study. The problem is the vocal cord parasites. If the papers documenting that research fall into Cypher's hands, they'll take another long, hard look at them. The ethnic cleansers we thought were history will become a reality. America, Zero, will have a weapon far more powerful than any nuke. Even worse, if this knowledge were to leak, the world, humanity, can't be entrusted with this kind of power. Recover the containers before the enemy extraction choppers arrive.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. Guess we'll get going, I guess. Where's the landmine? Oh, they're all over there. Okay, never mind. No, we'll forget them for now. Our main focus is to get the
You have
containers.
arrived at your destination.
Alle eenheden, speciale waarschuwing. Verdedig your positions. Uit.
Boss, looks like they're stepping up security around the targets. Watch yourself.
Damn it. So they're somewhere in this area, the jungle. But 50 years of study, wow.
Analysis
They
complete.
must know where the containers are. If you can
Analysis
just squeeze
complete.
it out of them.
Damn, this is gonna be a little difficult. They're wearing full armor, and I got no... Oh. They're wearing full armor, and I got no weapons to penetrate them, so... Gonna have to try and sneak up behind one.
Nope. Nope. Nope.
Sit your ass down.
Our early warning radar still hasn't picked up the enemy choppers. I've updated the info on your
Map
iDroid.
has been
Take a look.
updated.
The PF soldiers have no idea what's in those containers. Strictly a need-to-know basis.
Right. You know what? Let's just take him.
You gotta extract him.
Yep, that's the plan. Oh, at least for now, I guess.
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us.
Spit it out.
You know what? Why don't we go and ask the guard detail commander?
Is
Yeah. Come here. Spit it out. Where? Okay.
Hier is Delta 3. Iets je moeite waard om uit te checken. Stuurbevel. Oor. De CPF begrijpt. Bescherm securiteit en weersvakken. Uit.
Yeah, why don't we extract him? Oh, no.
Caution, rain approaching.
CPF, dat is Delta hier. Iets vreemd aan de gang.
Shit. Fucking extract him.
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us.
Now I gotta find a way to get down to that valley now. Forest. Ouch. Let's try and get there.
CPF de solutie hebben. Zag verloren pijl. Bespied laatste punt van contact. Oor. De CPF begrijpt. Houd die voort in. Voilà. Uit.
Okay, they're all distracted over there, so we just start sprinting this way.
De CPF begrijpt. Wees op jullie hoede. Moeite laat van hun je omringing. Uit. HK. De CPF. Beveel vijand ingetrekt, maar contact verloren naar kruisvuur. Vijand kan nog iemand daarbij wegkrijgen. Adviseer waakzaamheid. Hoor.
So now we know where the containers are. We can just go straight up to that. Oh, and you know what? Some documents.
Intel
You got an
file
intel file.
obtained.
Unfortunately, there's nothing new in it.
Typical. Okay, there's one over there, one down there. Okay, well, let's go to this one then.
Visibility
Uh-oh.
the branches become one with the forest. The forest is aware of the enemy's noise.
Yeah.
You must be too.
Oh, I know where I'm gonna be now. Fire in the hole too. Yeah. Oh shit. I tried to be clever.
Snake, are you okay? Snake!
Nope, I'm not okay. Yeah, you see me.
Development complete.
Oh, really?
Development complete.
Subject on board.
Wait a minute. Before I do go,
Enemy presence detected. The map has been updated.
get out of the way, man. I didn't want to go. I was trying to go for a no kill. That dude got in the way. You know what? Screw it. Oh shit, that must have hurt. Ow.
Our early warning radar still hasn't picked up the enemy choppers. But it's only a matter of time before they arrive.
How about we just stay here for a bit? Till things have really passed over. What would be the best weapon to go try and knock back and fully armored, yeah.
Please select a drop point. Supplies requested. Supply drop complete.
Well, I just wanna like knock him back. Yeah, I just want to like knock them back, not kill them. shooting goddamn flares up.
Caution, rain approaching.
Okay. Intel file. Which we already seen.
That's fine. Analyzing the intel file you picked up. We've got a fix on the target.
Arrived at Mother Base.
Check it on your iDroid.
It still stands. Go after this one first.
Visibility in the jungle isn't great. Watch out. You could run into the enemy at any time.
Feel the roots. The branches become one with the forest. The forest is aware of the enemy's noise. You must be too.
Ik wil niet, prik niet. Damn it!
He's coming too. Roger that.
Hier Peter, Delta 3. Een kolonnepassing van onze troepen die lucht getrekken. Ons heeft waarschijnlijk een indringer. Wat is de situatie? Alle eenheden staan bij.
Ik wil niet, prik niet. Damn it! Iemand...
Okay, here's one. Here's container one.
You gotta extract him. Target extraction confirmed.
Extraction
That leaves one
arrived
target to
at
go.
Mother Base.
Take care of the next one. Boss,
Okay.
our early warning radar just picked up the enemy choppers. We'll keep you informed of their ETA. Hurry up and extract the target. You can't go firing on the XOF choppers. If we attack XOF now, it'll be a declaration of war against Cypher itself. That time will come, but it's not now.
Can I jump over? Yes, I can. Okay. Sorry, Dee Dee, but you're gonna have to go across the bridge.
Enemy presence detected. The map has been updated.
Must be a
Hier
bit
Peter,
there.
Delta 3. Onderzoek voltooid. Geen teken van die vijand. Over. Er is geen teer, begrijp. Wees paraat. Uit. Hier Peter, Zulu 2. Onze hulpbronnen is gestild. Waarschijnlijk een indringer. Bijstand alsjeblieft. Over. Er is geen teer, begrijp. Verdere verlies is onaanvaardbaar. Hou jullie oorwoord. Uit.
No, you're not. Oh shit, they're all coming this way. Stay down.
Muna. Alsjeblieft. Moet je doen.
Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on.
All right.
Good.
Target extraction confirmed. We've avoided the worst possible outcome. Exfiltrate the area. Go ahead and call the
Analysis
chopper.
complete.
You can also
Analysis
exfiltrate the
complete.
mission
Ooh,
area
I'm
by
gonna
land.
take that.
The map has been updated.
Ik zal niet meer horen. Hey! Rij naar je.
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us.
GPS Delta 9. Infos zijn geopend. Delta 9, wat voor? Kom in, Delta 9. Wat is de situatie? Alle hier verstaan bij.
He's coming too. Roger that.
GPS Delta 6. Onze hulpbron is gestild. Waarschijnlijk een inbreuk. Bijstand alsjeblieft. Over.
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us. The enemies notice the targets are gone. They'll be looking for you. Hurry up and exfiltrate the hot zone.
GPS 2. Ik zie een gehoor. Dan mag vijanden in die gebied wees. Over. De CPF begrijpt. Bescherm securiteit en wees wakker. Uit.
Beweeg.
Guys, enough screwing around. Let's get out of here.
Support helicopter requested.
He's coming too. Roger that.
Unless...
This is B-Quad. Arriving shortly at LZ.
Good.
GPS Delta 6. This is B-Quad. On station at LZ.
Alright, Diddy, let's get out.
Gaining altitude.
Yay, finally. Oop.
Exfiltrated hot
Right.
zone.
You're out of the hot zone. No enemy forces in pursuit. Mission complete.
Extraction arrived at Mother Base.
Good.
Mission complete. Boss.
A B, of course. Hey,
Boss. We got Code Talker's research materials back in one piece. The medical team has them under lock and key in the quarantine facility. The materials should help their research into the vocal cord parasites. Cypher won't be getting their hands on them now.
good. Code Talker and his research, Skullface's objective, and the hamburgers of Kazuhiro Miller. Which reminds me, I haven't,
Prolonged time in the field is bad for the body and mind. I think it's time you took a break. Do it for me. Come back to Mother Base ASAP.
Dude, I was just back at Mother Base. Oh, man. Oh.
Stay back. It's too dangerous. Hey, Back up, kid. I said no. You have to stay back. Some things can't be helped. Back to your quarters.
What's going on?
What's going on?
Shabani. Mayaka 9 Kingo ya Shabani.
It's down there. Hey, the tank at the bottom is filled with chlorine disinfectant. One whiff and you'll suffocate.
Yep.
Don't
Hey.
hit it.
Hey, at least the necklace will be
Could
disinfected.
you let it fall down there anyway?
He didn't. It was his fault. And even he knows. Yo!
Hit the alarm! No! You go down there, and it is over. Boss! Hey! Listen to me! There is no way to recover the body. What kind of stunt was that? Trying to panic us?
Nope, she's still okay. And she's got it. Oh, that must have burned. Oh, that must have hurt like hell. Ooh, there's a diamond.
Look. Here.
Now try and keep it with you.
Boss, about that AI pod you retrieved from Emmerich's research facility.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what we found inside? A corpse. Human. The pod maintained a low internal temperature the whole time, and very little outside air got in. That would have slowed down decomposition. Still, the remains were mostly skeletal. Estimated time of death is between 6 months and a year ago. We put the screws to Huey about it. Listen to the tape. Turns out it was the body of someone we knew very well.
Okay. Which reminds me, we haven't listened to the tapes in a while. I guess I can pop in a few. Okay, so let's listen to some tapes. We got a lot of tapes to cover. Oh yeah, we got a lot of tapes to cover. Let's start with the man on fire. What happened next with the man on fire?
You mentioned that the man on fire was crushed under Sahelanthropus in its hangar.
Yeah. He was caught under the wheels of its transport platform.
But his body wasn't found.
What?
We searched the area the moment we arrived, but there was no trace of him.
I wasn't hallucinating.
I know. I trust you on that. That means someone must have taken the body. When I got there, everything was still as it was. Even Skullface hadn't been touched. I can't see a reason to sneak into a place like that and drag out the biggest, heaviest guy there.
What are you getting at?
The only option left is he got up and walked away.
That platform ran him over.
Just ran him over.
You're saying that's not enough?
I don't want to believe it, but maybe not. He shrugs off bullets, even rocket strikes. There's no reason to think that would finish him. It seems ridiculous, but I'll start gathering eyewitness accounts just in case.
If you dig up anything concrete, I want to know.
You'll be the first, if I dig anything up. But I hope to hell I don't.
No kidding.
Okay, next tape. The Man on Fire.
Volgan, the GRU colonel, was burned alive with a Shagohod during Operation Snake Eater 20 years ago. Despite suffering severe burns to his entire body, he still clung to life. After you left Seleniarsk, Volgan's body was taken to a research institute in the outskirts of Moscow. But modern medicine couldn't explain why he was still alive. Not that the colonel was any ordinary man to begin with. That constant electric current he had running through his body that he could unleash at will. To be honest, I was always uncomfortable around him. Thought I might get electrocuted just by standing nearby. The institute studying him was tasked with investigating and developing human paranormal abilities. The comatose Volgan was used to further the Soviet Union's research into such abilities. But not long ago, the facility burned to the ground. And Volgan's body was never found among the rubble, even though the fire started in the room where they were keeping him. This occurred at around the same time you woke up. If Skullface was right, and a thirst for revenge can turn a man into a demon and keep the dead alive, then this man on fire who's been coming after us ever since you woke up, well, that just might be what's left of our old friend Volgan. It's not over yet. Back in '64, in Seleniarsk, you brought his plans for a utopia down in flames. That grudge is what's keeping him alive.
Oh man, I'm listening to tapes. Wait, what? Oh, okay. Okay, there we go. Next tape. The Man on Fire. Who is the floating boy?
The day the research facility holding Volgan burned down, a Soviet jumbo passenger jet happened to crash nearby, far away to the north of that hospital in Cyprus. On board the plane was a young boy who was being studied at the same facility. The plane fell to Earth from over 8,000 feet, but the boy's body was the only one not recovered. At almost exactly the same time as the crash, Volgan awoke in that facility. According to the Research Institute's documents, the gifts this boy demonstrated included psychokinesis and telepathy. To protect his mind from being inundated with other people's thoughts, he always wore a kind of gas mask. A rudimentary form of psychic insulation, apparently. We don't know where this boy is, but if Skullface is connected to him, we may cross paths with him yet. This boy is part of a new age, where nothing we understand about the world makes sense anymore. Don't let your guard down.
Right. Okay. So get squeeze around this corner, and there we go. Okay, one more. Another tape. The vocal cord parasites, the Devil's House.
So what were they doing at Enzoya Badia, Baloo? That facility with all the people laid out in rows?
The abandoned factory Shabani was held in. It is precisely as you guessed. Black Anna was coding languages into the vocal cord parasites.
They infected the subjects with the parasites, then made an incision in the throat to expose the vocal cords. That allowed them to play recordings of a desired language directly to the parasites.
And the parasites learn the languages that way. That's some teaching method. I just don't get how a bunch of bugs had the brain power for it.
They don't. Do not judge them by human standards. They do not learn as a function of intellect.
Then how do they do it?
What language the parasites react to is coded into their genes. You could expose the Japanese strain to English for years, and it would never learn the language and react to it. The pronunciation, rhythm, and structure are different. But what about, say, Spanish and Portuguese? Linguistically, the two are very close.
Yeah, they're both Ibero-Romance languages.
Even so, a Spanish language mating pair exposed to Portuguese will not copulate. Only when they hear Spanish. Only then. And the majority of their offspring will be the same.
So it's a literal case of a mother tongue.
But if that's so, I don't see how the different strains can be created in the first place.
Well, among the many thousands of offspring, there may be just a few that react to Portuguese.
You're talking about mutations.
Correct. Playing the tapes helps to identify the mutant strains. Those specimens are then isolated and bred with one another. From their children, specimens that react more strongly to Portuguese can again be selected and bred. Repeating this process creates a strain that reacts solely to Portuguese and never to Spanish. Mutation and selection. No different to breeding roses.
So you kept increasing the change over the generations, adapting them to languages from all over the world. Must have taken a hell of a lot of patience.
More like patience. Just how many died for this?
There's something I still don't get. In order to tell which larvae will react to Portuguese, you'd have to let them develop and then see which copulate. That means you'd need tens of thousands of guinea pigs. There's no way you could do that in a facility that small.
For normal selective breeding methods, you would be right. But there is a more effective selection method when training the vocal cord parasites.
Go on.
It is not only when mating that the parasites listen for language. Shortly before hatching, larvae display markedly increased activity in reaction to particular language. The active eggs can be identified under a black light. So the eggs that react to Portuguese are selectively placed in the throats of subjects. So you see, narrowing down strains that react to the target language is an effective process. Though I'm sure that even so, many lost their lives to create the various strains.
Taken against their will into that dungeon.
There are two reasons for playing the tapes for the parasites. One, to isolate the eggs that respond to the target language. And two, to cause the specimens raised from the selected eggs to mate.
I get how the system works. But why do they respond to language before they even hatch? It's not like they can mate from inside an egg.
It is because the larvae learn the language before hatching.
Interesting. Okay. Set tapes. The vocal cord parasites. The vocal cord parasites' language learning ability.
You mentioned that what language the parasites respond to is hard-coded into their genes, and that they don't have the brain power to actually learn a language. But then you say that the larvae at Nzoyabadiabulu were learning the languages in the egg. Your story doesn't add up.
Your country is home to a unique songbird. The Japanese bush warbler.
Sure, what of it?
What a beautiful call it has. But no bush warbler can sing it perfectly at the start. As chicks, they can barely chirp at all. They must learn from their parents and other adult birds. Only then can they sing properly and attract females. So naturally, there are individual differences in each bird's call. Though they start on the same footing, each bird is influenced by its teachers.
And the parasites are the same?
Like the birds, the parasites have a genetic predisposition towards a particular language. But while in the egg, the larvae's ears are tweaked by listening to the voice of the host. This tweaking ensures that the grown parasites will react better to the host's speech pattern.
Why would they have an ability like that?
Well, there are distinct regional differences within even the same language. Rare is the language that has no unique dialects. Yes, learning the host's speech pattern before hatching attunes the larvae to whatever twist of pronunciation it will encounter. This adaptive ability is what makes them so formidable.
I see. So a language requires selective breeding, but the parasites can learn dialects by themselves.
Of course, having the egg-stage larvae listen to the tapes in the factory was not meant to teach them. It was more important to use that trait of theirs to identify the mutated strains. As I mentioned earlier,
Is that really accurate enough to use as a weapon? You could wipe out a neighboring ethnic group by accident if their pronunciation is too close.
what you say is true. In that sense, they are imperfect as ethnic cleansers. But for his purposes, they are good enough. His objective was not to exterminate any one ethnic group, but to render the world's lingua franca, English, inert.
Another cassette. Sahelanthropus Tape 2. Sahelanthropus Armor Material.
Emmerich didn't go with depleted uranium for Sahelanthropus's armor because of its strength.
He had nukes in mind.
Exactly. It's meant to use its body as the fuel component for a nuclear weapon. Sahelanthropus uses built-in uranium enrichment Archaea to melt its own body and extract uranium-235 from the depleted uranium in its armor. Those Archaea perform the enrichment in an extremely short time. The concentration jumps by a factor of several hundred, from 0.2% to over 90%. The end result being highly enriched weapons-grade uranium. Sahelanthropus's body itself becomes a nuclear bomb. Emmerich says if it were to self-destruct, the nuclear yield would be somewhere in the region of 15 kilotons. Since you need about 50 kilograms of highly enriched uranium to trigger a nuclear reaction, that would mean Sahelanthropus contains something like 23 tons of depleted uranium.
That's not very much.
No, it isn't. That's about what you'd expect to find in a main battle tank's armor. The point is, it can be transported anywhere, even use its conventional weaponry on the battlefield, and the international community will never suspect a thing.
Okay. Sahelanthropus Tape 3. The Captured Sahelanthropus.
I just received word from the R&D team and the transport team out of Afghanistan. They finished installing Sahelanthropus on the base. It's ours now.
All right. Don't let any of the staff touch that thing. Especially Emmerich.
Of course. That guy's crush on Sahelanthropus is beyond a joke. Guess he really wants to see his tech stand on its own two legs this time.
That's not gonna happen.
I know it. So you've got no plans to make it operational again?
Damn right.
Boss, I want to hear it straight from you.
Hear what?
What the hell do you want with that thing? The drive is busted. It's not like it has a nuke on board. Even if the metallic Archaea could turn it into a nuclear weapon, all it can do is self-destruct. Sahelanthropus just isn't a weapon anymore. It'll draw unwanted attention without even being a deterrent. I know. The weapons development strut sank 2 feet under that thing's weight. That's 1 year's drop in a single night. We've started on reinforcing the strut, but there's no guarantee it'll hold up if a storm hits.
I know that too.
Boss, why keep it?
It's a mark. Us Diamond Dogs, we don't have a country to call home. That means we have no past, nothing to prove that we lived. Every one of us threw it all away when we came here. Sahelanthropus is a symbol to show that the likes of us brought at least one crisis to its end.
A mark in history. So we can't just fade away.
It's of no practical use to us. But we still need it.
A symbol of what we've done. I'm glad I sounded you out on this. Snake, on behalf of all of us, I want to thank you.
I don't need gratitude. I need security. Keep Emmerich away from that thing.
Roger that.
Or better yet, why don't you just dismantle the thing and put each part of the piece, on different strips of Mother Base. An arm at the R&D, the legs at the medical, torso at the support, head at the command. Anyway, next cassette tape. Metallic Archaea. What are metallic Archaea?
Code Talker. What are the metallic Archaea?
Volcanic craters spewing sulfur. Water hot enough to boil your skin off. Ocean depths of 800 plus atmospheres. Wastelands radioactive enough to kill you where you stand. There are groups of organisms that survive this fight. No, because of living in such environments.
I've heard about that. Extremo something.
Extremophiles. By selecting certain species, then subculturing and repeatedly modifying them, I created a metallic offspring of pure Archaea. They subsist on metals rather than organic matter.
And some of them even consume uranium?
Yes. Uranium enrichment Archaea metabolize only uranium-235. As a result, they produce weapons-grade enriched uranium.
How is that possible?
Consider how plants fractionate carbon isotopes when they conduct photosynthesis. Nature possesses abilities beyond our imagination.
So it was Archaea that brought down your chopper?
Corrosive Archaea, yes. They oxidize metals, feeding off the energy in the electrons they receive. What became of the wreckage?
We had the R&D team retrieve samples for study in airtight plastic containers, of course.
Prudent. We shall extract Archaea from it in good time. They should help you fight back against Black Anna.
Any chance we could start now? It doesn't have to be a lot. I might just have another use for it.
If it's only a small amount you need.
That's fine. I'll get the R&D team to assist. Let's go.
Oh yeah, when Ocelot used that metallic Archaea on Huey's legs, when they were interrogating him. Okay, so let's check the next tape. Ouch. Metallic Archaea, nuclear testing in South Africa.
South Africa was previously suspected of developing nuclear weapons. It already had a conspicuous presence at the UN because of apartheid and its armed expansionism. But when neighboring Angola and Mozambique became socialist countries in '74, South Africa felt hounded into a corner. So it accelerated its nuclear program to protect itself. 3 years later, the Soviets discovered a test facility, and 2 years after that, an American satellite observed a flash in the southern Indian Ocean. It said this was South Africa conducting a nuclear test with the help of a certain ally. Skullface used the situation in South Africa to get his ally to lend a hand. They both wanted nukes, so it was a mutually beneficial relationship. On the surface, anyway.
I figure South Africa started getting serious about nuclear weapons production in '75. In '74, the government was still able to get by with bluffing that it had a nuclear arsenal. But the year after, word spread that an independent armed group in the Caribbean was crushed by Cypher for possessing a WMD. That's right, boss. What happened to you and your men was the reason South Africa decided to push ahead with nuclear development. A force independent of any country getting its hands on a nuke. That was a threat to the existence of countries everywhere. It wasn't just South Africa. Your presence pushed a lot of countries to get nukes. The world was scared of you. You were a threat to more than just the Cold War. If nations are gears in a machine, you had the power to smash them loose and watch the whole world grind to a halt.
Okay. Next tape. Metallic Archaea. Emmerich's power-assisted exo-legs.
Emmerich uses externally powered legs of his own design. It's bionics technology, a product of the U.S. military's failed attempt to develop a powered exoskeleton. All the wearer has to do is apply a little force, and the actuators continue the movement in that direction. But his legs are unique. Instead of using a hydraulic mechanism, the actuators run off metallic Archaea. That increases the actuator's reaction speed and also enables him to lock and release the joints at will. The legs are a nifty little gadget, but they have two clear weaknesses. First, they're dependent on external power, maybe because he built them knowing he couldn't leave his lab. There's no internal battery. That's why they won't work if they aren't plugged in. Second, and this is more than just a weakness, the legs are directly connected to his bones. Could be to minimize signal loss and the orders output to the legs and the drive response from them. Either way, Emmerich has used bolts to attach load-bearing parts directly to his femurs, probably by mimicking surgical treatment for compound fractures and the like. But the end result is those legs and his body are fused together, and that appears to be how he's able to move them so precisely. But that also means that any shock to the legs would be delivered right to his bones by way of those bolts. The same is true if he encounters the corrosive metallic Archaea. If the corrosive Archaea ate into the exposed bolts, they'd reach the endoskeleton parts and eat through them too in the blink of an eye. The doctor's bones are full of holes to accommodate all the bolts. They're like sponges. If he were to lose the reinforcing parts, even the tiniest bit of force or weight would snap his bones. So when I dangled those corrosive metallic Archaea in front of him, he realized straight away what would happen. Life wouldn't be worth living if he lost those legs of his. I'd bet that is what the doctor fears the most. I just helped him imagine what it would be like. Thanks to that, I got the information we needed without either of us getting hurt. You know how he is. He's probably already over the shock. The better you know your adversary, the easier it is for you to get information from them. And vice versa.
Yep. Okay. Anyway, next tape. The Safety Mechanism, or Metallic Archaea, Tape 3. The Safety Mechanism of Nuclear Saturation.
You said that the nuke Skullface was trying to spread around the world were equipped with a failsafe. Something that could shut them down at will. His will.
Quite so. After all, he needed a guarantee that a buyer wouldn't simply turn the weapons back on him.
So how can they be stopped?
The criticality trigger, that is, the detonator, is a complete black box design. Any attempt to dismantle it causes it to melt in seconds, using the corroding Archaea. The design ensures that no detonation is possible unless he disengages the lock.
So he had a way to disengage it remotely.
Precisely. The client simply presses a button. At that moment, the detonator begins transmission with a surveillance satellite. The satellite reports to him how the client is trying to use the nuke. If he does not object, the lock is disengaged.
But if it's a risk to him in any way...
The detonator melts down. The same is true if detonation does not occur within a preset time after the lock is disengaged. The nuke is rendered useless.
Who the hell would buy something with strings attached like that?
The client would never know until the moment they actually try to use it. Most likely, he would have explained the time delay as the detonators needing time to activate. And he only intended to sell to technologically primitive groups in the first place.
Let me guess. He'd claim it was defective and offer a replacement. Shadier than a used car salesman.
Skullface shakes your hand like a friend, using the other to control you like a puppet. This is how he works.
Okay. Metallic Archaea Tape 4. Uranium Enrichment Archaea.
This is yellow cake that Cypher was having the PFs transport. Before we met you, the boss recovered it from a truck crossing the savannah. Are there metallic Archaea inside it?
Yes, the Archaea metabolize uranium-235 to subsist. They must be stored inside yellow cake, or they cannot survive.
So those biological traces we took for impurities were actually the real cargo.
Of course, they are deactivated, so they do not trigger a sudden enrichment. They are like baker's yeast. Yet, they do gradually enrich the uranium as they feed. I imagine you detected weapons-grade traces.
Yeah, we did.
And the malachite that was loaded on the truck had traces of uranium in it, too. So that's the flower, huh? Skullface was gonna sell do-it-yourself nuke kits. The uranium-enriching Archaea complete with a user's manual. And the ores with the uranium could be sourced by the client or provided by Cypher.
Even the trace amounts buried in common ores can be enriched to weapons-grade uranium by the metallic Archaea. Proving that must have been the most important factor of the trials. That and the ability to successfully prevent detonation.
So if the amounts of uranium in the ores are low enough, they can get past any inspection. And you only need a tiny amount of the Archaea to act as the yeast. No great challenge to smuggle that either. The first step towards saturating the world with nukes.
His plan. That was not my intention. My only goal in developing the metallic Archaea was to save the Dene.
Okay. Motive for researching metallic Archaea.
What made you think a tool for creating undetectable nuclear weapons would save your people?
After 70 years, the Dene reclaimed the Navajo nation from which we were banished. We bore all the hardships of poverty, but we were proud to live off the land we called our own. But in the moment the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, everything changed.
I don't get it.
The nuclear arms race between the US and the Soviet Union began with the end of the Second World War. Suddenly, there was a massive demand for uranium. And it was our ill fortune that the ground beneath the Navajo Nation was rich with uranium ore. The Black Ana government set up mine after mine, and many of the Dene worked them, never informed of any danger. Every day, they went to work with no protection. The slag was simply piled out in the open. When rain fell, uranium traces left behind would seep out, and when the ground dried, it was blown about as dust. Land and water were contaminated, irradiated. Many of us became sick and died. That pain lives on to this day.
I had no idea.
Wanting more than anything to revive the land my forebears left to me, I was delighted upon discovering microbes that eat uranium. If they could be domesticated, I believed we could rid our land of uranium.
Were you successful?
No. The research called for funding on a colossal scale. But nobody was willing to invest with no prospect of a return.
And that's when Skullface showed up.
Correct. I can save you and your people. We share the same will. That is what he said to me. And I believed him. Blagana forced me to abandon my uranium cleanup work and focus on nuclear weapons. And he held all the Dine hostage. Today, the uranium mines within the reservation are finally closing down. It is simply less expensive now to source uranium overseas.
New victims, different places.
But uranium is a tactical resource. To rely on a foreign country for it is a difficult decision to make. And he was in the perfect place to influence that decision.
He could have condemned your people to the mines forever.
The contamination comes not only from uranium. The fallout from the Nevada nuclear tests also settled on our lands. As if our fortune were not already bad enough, we are also downwinders. To save the Dine, I must complete my original research.
Wow. Okay. How many? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Whew. Okay. Well, next tape. Code Talker and his research. Parasites living within us.
Code Talker, haven't seen you eat a single thing since you got here. Let me guess. Photosynthesis?
Oh? What makes you say that?
Well, a long time ago, I knew someone with a similar ability.
Well, you are correct. Most of my body is covered with parasites. I supply them with water, and in return, I receive sugars they produce when exposed to light. It isn't just my skin either. The parasites also act as my eyes. They have replaced many of my internal organs as well. It is thanks to them that I live on after over a century.
How did you obtain them anyway? Through your research?
I would like to say as much, but there is more to it than that. Let me take you back 20 years. I had hit a dead end with my parasite research. Then I was approached by a foundation. They said they had a sample of an unusual strain of parasite.
Which foundation?
Apparently, they had links to ARPA. But that is all I learned. I was somewhat ignorant of the ways of the world. Just being able to study it was enough for me.
Yeah, I've heard that before. Go on.
Half in doubt, I visited them to discover the body of an old man. Well, to be precise, his partial remains. A collection of parts, you could say. The man had died in an explosion.
An old man, you say?
His flesh had not decomposed. In fact, the tissue's cells were still metabolizing. The parasite had infected. or should I say assimilated with, the tissues, and was keeping them alive. I became obsessed with studying the body parts, foregoing food and even sleep. Every day was filled with new discoveries. The parasite's biology, internal anatomy, life cycle. But there was only so much I could learn through observation. And so I made a decision. To truly know the parasites, I had to live with them.
So, you implanted them inside you from the dead man's flesh?
Correct. It was quite a gamble, whether or not they would adapt to me. But fortunately, it appears I was compatible with them. Or perhaps, through my many years of research, my immune system learned to tolerate them.
Were they that body's only parasite?
Yes. However, there was a separate specimen that supplied its host with adrenaline in response to pain, and yet another that could control insects at will through secreting heterogeneous pheromones. I wanted exposure to them, to take them into me, but my wishes were denied. Their records, though, provided clues that helped advance my research. Would you care to join me? A life spent never worrying about food is a most wonderful one.
I think I'll pass. But thanks. This has been helpful.
Wait a minute. I want to hear that part again.
Code Talker. Have you
Well, I supplied and yet another that could however, there was a separate specimen that supplied its host with adrenaline in response to pain, and yet another that could control insects at will through secreting heterogeneous pheromones. I wanted exposure to them, to take them into me, but my wishes were denied. Their records, though, provided clues that helped advance my research. Would you care to join me? A life spent never worrying about food is a most wonderful one.
I think I'll pass.
Wow. Okay. All right. To tell you the truth, when I did my first playthrough of this game, I've only I only listened to the tapes that were marked yellow because I know they're the ones that are important. But when Code Talker was talking about researching on the parts from parts from a man that died in an explosion, I know who he was referring to. He was referring to the old man from Metal Gear Solid 3. His name was oh god, what was his name? His name was The End, which is an old man sniper that also had similar powers that Code Talker has now, like photosynthesis and everything, and then the one that could tolerate pain, which is the pain, and the one that controls insects, the controls insects. I think that's the Fury as well. Or, no, I don't think. But I know the one that can tolerate pain is from the Pain. So, yeah, that's a good callback from Metal Gear Solid 3. Anyway, Code Talker and his research too. What covers the skulls?
The one that covers the parasite that lives on the surface of the skull's bodies is what gives them their power, similar to my children who live in my skin. I modified the parasites I isolated from the body of that old man, differentiating them with various abilities. One that can blend perfectly into its surroundings by exposing the pigments in its cells at will. Another that, by harboring multiple species of metallic Archaea, can oxidize and reduce metal. Isolating the one that covers and transplanting it into an artificial medium should provide the same abilities as the skulls, but they can only subsist within a human body. Once transplanted into the medium, they will eventually die. Another thing, the weakness of the one that covers is desiccation. Their surface moisture loss is greater than ours. The reason they give off mist is to alleviate this by releasing the salts inside them as microparticles. Water vapor condenses around them, appearing as mist. But this dries out the atmosphere until they cannot even produce mist. And once their supply of water from the host runs out, the parasites are in danger.
Caution,
They,
heavy mist
along with their host,
anticipated.
enter a form of suspended animation. However, a similar effect occurs if they come into contact with a large amount of water. Rain, for instance. The one that covers will temporarily abandon other processes in his eagerness to absorb the water. Pitijolone. Make the weather your ally.
Okay, large amounts of rain to ward them off. Okay. Alright, Code Talker and his research, Tape 3. The origins of Code Talker.
There's something I've been wondering. Why are you called Code Talker? During World War II, the U.S. military used the languages of different tribes, including the Navajo, as codes, right? I know the term Code Talker was used to mean people sent to the battlefield to speak in those codes. Were you one of them?
Our mother tongue was indeed used for war. But I did not go. I was already over the conscription age. However, I was made to help craft the codes that were spoken. So in a wider sense, you could call me a code talker for that. Navajo is a complex language, and virtually no one outside the U.S. speaks it. They must have thought it was the perfect language to use as a code.
Yeah, in the end, the Japanese never cracked it. The cipher is king in information warfare.
Of course, they didn't simply speak in Navajo. They created substitutions for words according to a code book, and then translated those into our language. Young Dene was sent to the front lines of the Pacific Theater as code talkers. To fight is an honor for the Dene. They were the pride of our people. But I cannot say this history brings me joy. Words are alive. When they are spoken, life is breathed into them. They become a part of the listener. Our words were transformed into lifeless ciphers and used for war. This, after the Black Ana spent generations suppressing the language.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So I guess we shouldn't be calling you Code Talker, huh?
No, I do not mind. The reason Skullface called me Code Talker was because I also am responsible for coding language into the vocal cord parasites. I am the same as those young warriors, used for a cipher's sake. I must never forget that. The name, Code Talker, is a lesson carved into my being.
Motive for researching vocal cord parasites.
You said Skullface ordered you to weaponize the vocal cord parasites. But you also said he wasn't the reason.
And he wasn't. I was seduced by the parasites. That is a fact.
How? You mean from your curiosity as a scientist?
That I cannot deny. But there is more to it. The story goes back to the 19th century, to my earliest memory. One day, a man from the government visited our Hogan, our home. I cried as he yanked me from my mother's arms and took me away to an Indian boarding school. From that day forward, I I became George. This was the name my teacher gave me. I was forced to give up my Diné name, forbidden from speaking anything but English. If we dared utter a word of filthy Navajo, the teacher made us eat a bar of soap.
Yeah, that was the U.S. government's education policy for Native Americans.
To erase our words was like erasing our people. Their education was tantamount to ethnic cleansing. Over time, the overt persecution of our language stopped. But to this day, it continues to be eaten away by the lingua franca, that is English. Many of the Diné outside the reservations can speak nothing else. And it isn't just our language. Across the world, minority languages are being destroyed by dominant languages. Many are on the verge of extinction.
Enter the vocal cord parasites.
Yes, I began thinking that minority languages needed some sort of deterrent against dominant languages. In order that their peoples and cultures would survive. It was then that I came across literature at the Foundation claiming that man acquired language thanks to a type of parasite, one that distinguishes between languages as a precursor to reproduction. If I could just resurrect it, make it more pathogenic, I would have my deterrent against English. But I failed to hide that aim from Skullface. He noticed. Yes, I wanted to retaliate against the English language, though never did I intend to actually use it as he planned. You know how the story ends. I was forced to study how to make the parasites compatible with all the world's languages. All but English.
However, he in fact secretly isolated an English strain.
I will not be held prisoner by the man's phantom. The English strain must not be allowed to exist either.
Well, that American boarding school, or to us, it's called the residential schools, and they were also they were basically responsible for taking away, like, Native American children away from their homes and, forced to learn, the ways of how people should be, going their way. Basically destroying their ethnicity. And, yeah. And that was Code Talker's plan, was to make the English strain and to wipe out their ethnic, but he didn't go through with it, I guess. Anyway, Code Talker and his research tape 4, the Ethnic Cleansing Parasite Project.
I have no doubt Skullface's plan is almost complete. At that point, I will no longer be of use to him. I must leave behind this record at least. A record of how the ancient vocal cord parasites became these abominable ethnic cleansing parasites. I believe he has two purposes for the ethnic cleansing parasites. The first, as their name suggests, is ethnic cleansing. This conflict between East and West that envelops the world will not last much longer. Once the Cold War ends, and the weight of America and the Soviet Union is lifted away, the ethnic conflicts they kept suppressed will all rise to the surface. It is not difficult to imagine that the radical sides will begin cleansing their adversaries. But what if an ethnic cleansing parasite matching the language of the aggressors were to be unleashed? The aggressors would be washed off the earth. At the very least, the idea that retaliation could eradicate your people would prove a powerful deterrent. The second purpose is the Englishization of the world. To cipher the organization, this is probably their main use. Man thinks in words, or rather, words are man's very means of thinking. If you erase a word representing some concept, the concept itself disappears from the world. Nishone means beautiful in Navajo, but the image that comes to mind when we say Nishone differs from the Blackanas, beautiful. An azure sky, a rolling landscape, lush greenery. The meaning we place in Nishone has its roots in Diné culture. If we lose the word Nishone, the images of our beautiful homeland would be washed away into oblivion along with it, just as Orwell indicated years ago. Cypher, being based in America, is pushing Englishization for this very reason. Suppose all 5 billion people on this planet come to read, speak, and think in English. Their wills could also be streamlined under English. Cypher's control would be all the easier. Economic governance would progress in leaps and bounds. The ethnic cleansing parasites would be a great aid in accomplishing this goal. There is no need to destroy every language besides English. All they need to do is weaken other dominant languages competing with it. Russian, Chinese, Arabic. If people know they risk their lives speaking such languages, they will flock to the lingua franca that is English. Cypher need not even focus attention on smaller languages. After all, they are already being eaten away by English. Business, education, film, commodities. English has permeated every area of global society. I can see this when I look at young Diné. Some of them have already lost their grasp of the Navajo language. It is said that over 2,000 languages of the world are facing extinction. This very moment, cultural concepts and forms of expression are disappearing forever. The spread of electronic networks gives greater meaning to Englishization. Networks have no national borders. By basing them on a single language, they can penetrate deeper into and between people. That basic point of unity provides the ideal environment for someone who aims to control people's wills. But how does this differ from building the Tower of Babel?
Well, my car, okay. I didn't expect the car to blow up.
What's up, boss?
Oh. There we go.
Got time for a mock battle, boss?
No. Anyway. Next. The parasites gave us language.
The ethnic cleansing parasites attempt to rob man of his words. Such irony. It was the vocal cord parasites that gave words to him in the first place. Ancient man had no language. Unable to produce complex sounds due to the structure of the throat, he could communicate only through simple vocalizations and gestures. Then the vocal cord parasites infected his larynx. Man's transition to walking upright did not gift him solely with intelligence, but also with his voice. At the time, the vocal cord parasites never harmed man. They merely took a small measure of nourishment. In fact, you could call it a symbiotic relationship. Some animal species use particular vocalization and also the vocal cord parasites. The difference is that the parasites themselves did not produce sounds. Rather, they had their hosts, man, do it for them. Once secure on the human host vocal cords, a male vocal cord parasite caused the host to produce a certain sound pattern, something like a warble of a bird. Meanwhile, females parasitizing other host pharynxes need only wait. Upon hearing the sound pattern of an attractive mate, they would manipulate their hosts into making contact with the person it came from. The female traveled through his host's saliva to the other host's vocal cords, where the male was waiting and the pair copulated. We can only imagine how the female manipulated his host, but it was probably through smell. Smells traveled directly to the limbic system via the olfactory cilia in the nasal cavity. Volatile compounds released by the female would stimulate the limbic system, which controls instincts, making the host feel amorous. This kind of sexual selection naturally led to competition between the male parasites. Males that had their hosts produce sounds perceived by females as more attractive succeeded in copulating and producing offspring. Evolutionary traits caused by sexual selection are curious. The peacock's feathers, the mannequin's dance, the firefly's luminescence pattern. Even with courtship behaviors that are not advantageous to survival, those individuals that excel in them produce offspring, and it escalates with each generation. The same was true of the vocal cord parasites. Courtship vocalization rhythms and intonations became more sophisticated, and in order for man to produce such sounds, they had to alter his vocal organs. By lowering the position of the larynx and developing resonating chambers, they enabled more complex pronunciations. But that was not all. The vocal cord parasites activated a transcription factor that would later control man's language ability. A protein that, due to its appearance, is called forkhead box protein P2, or FOXP2. Activating this transcription factor led to the development of brain function capable of creating sophisticated frequency changes. This was the pinnacle of the vocal cord parasite's prosperity. However, this sophisticated pronunciation control was too useful for man to ignore. Once human sexual activity ceased to be only seasonal, and having lost pigment-based sexual characteristics, distinctive vocalizations became the most effective means for humans to attract mates as well. Combined with logic pathways hardwired into the brain, or universal grammar, it was not long before advanced communication was possible. This was the birth of language. Luckily for man, it was around this time that a particular retrovirus was circulating. While not lethal, it infected not only man, but the vocal cord parasites as well. It is presumed that this virus removed part of the parasite's DNA and reverse transcribed it into man's reproductive cells. It was a vector. Among the genes it transcribed were the ones responsible for the production of language. The vocal cord parasite's vocalization genes were written into the human genome. The parasites were no longer of any use to man now. Man could use his voice as he pleased, when he pleased, hindering the parasite's courtship vocalizations. Having lost their opportunity to reproduce, the parasites died out, leaving behind only the transcribed genes. The vocal cord parasites were once in symbiosis with man. Its genes even became a part of his. Humans and parasites are extremely close. As such, it will be extremely difficult for man's immune system to eliminate the vocal cord parasites. Even cutting them out will be no simple matter, which is exactly why these ethnic cleansing parasites are such a formidable weapon.
And we just finished coming back to the command platform. Wow, that was actually the length of the tape there. Okay, well, right now I am falling asleep, so why don't we do another tape? We'll head over to the medical platform. Just go down and then on my way there. So, next tape. Genesis of the vocal cord parasites.
The rise of the vocal cord parasites goes back approximately 300 million years to the Permian period. At that time, they were not even parasites, but predatory autotrophs. They are believed to have been the common ancestor to the Pentastomida and the Cyclops genus of copepods. However, Earth's environment underwent a violent change at the end of the Permian period. The cause is unclear, but evidence suggests that over 90% of the Earth's organisms at that time died out. The most pronounced threat to the proto-parasites was the severe reduction in oxygen concentration. The result was cladogenesis, a splitting that gave birth to a new strain that could parasitize other organisms' respiratory apparatus. This survival tactic helped lower their oxygen consumption, and inhabiting the throat kept them securely in contact with inhaled air. The best survivors were those that parasitized the reptiles that flourished at the time. Entering the Triassic period, the reptiles evolved into dinosaurs, and the proto-parasites shared in their success. Dinosaurs developed respiratory organs called air sacs to adapt to the low oxygen environment. These in particular helped the proto-parasites thrive. But another trial awaited them. The end of the Triassic period saw another drastic change in the Earth's environment. For most parasites, the male and female take the same host. Many are, in fact, hermaphrodites. Originally, the vocal cord parasites were as well. But for any strain to ride out a severe environmental change, it must secure a steady pool of genetic diversity. Another split. Now the newest strain procreated with mates found in other hosts. And in order to increase its encounters with those mates, the new strain utilized the voice of its host. They came to inhabit the host's vocal cords. This truly was the birth of the vocal cord parasite. The parasites developed the host's pharynx to form resonating chambers and used them to produce sophisticated mating calls. The relatively upright posture of the dinosaurs was important in this, because the crooked L-shaped pharynx was more suited to the development of resonating chambers. These developments ushered in a time of great prosperity for the parasites. But for the third time, the parasites had a major hurdle to overcome. The meteorite impact at the end of the Cretaceous period, which spelled the end of the dinosaurs. With their hosts extinct, the vocal cord parasites had no option but to find a new habitat. Birds. As genetic successors to the dinosaurs, with functioning air sac apparatus already in place, birds were the perfect choice. But the parasites could not survive in birds that flew at high altitudes with thinner air. So they parasitized ground-dwelling birds and altered their respiratory system for the sake of reproduction.
Heavy mist
They gave the
anticipated.
birds the means to produce sophisticated sounds. The syrinx responsible for chirping. This is the proof that points to activation of Fox P2 in songbirds as well as humans. The Cenozoic era began with a rise in oxygen concentration, which helped mammals to evolve and increase in size. The parasites then shifted to humans as a more effective host. Humans' bipedal upright walking meant that our throats could support larger resonating chambers. At first, vocal cord parasites entered humans using birds as their intermediate host. But eventually they changed to conducting their entire life cycle within human hosts. What happened next is as I have already described. People took the vocalizing prowess given them by the parasites and made it language. And once the parasites could no longer use it as their mating call, they died out. Or in other words, the parasites overcame all evolutionary hurdles except humanity. Skullface shared his opinion on this matter. He said the Ethnic Cleansers Project was sure to succeed. After all, the parasites had a grudge against us humans. To think we awoke them after such a long slumber, just so they could sate their thirst for vengeance. It is terrible, unforgivable,
Clouds approaching.
and yet, it is what I have done.
Okay. Next one. The revival of the vocal cord parasites.
I learned of the vocal cord parasite's existence in literature belonging to the Foundation. It was little more than a theory. The question was, why does only Homo sapiens among all primates have highly developed language? Human versus everything else. The missing link between these was the mystery that gave rise to this theory. I was fascinated by the idea of their existence. In the Dene creation myth, the Neyo Dene, who first inhabited the world, were insect-like creatures. I came to imagine that those insect-like creatures could be humans living in symbiosis with the vocal cord parasites. But I had not the faintest idea of how I could resurrect them. That is when Skullface came to me. What he offered me was not just assistance with my metallic Archaea research. He told me the vocal cord parasites really existed. And not only did they exist, they had already been brought back to life in the modern age. An ancient human cadaver, host to the parasites of the time. Cypher excavated such a cadaver from a permafrost region and isolated the DNA coding of the vocal cord parasites. Naturally, they were long dead and could not be brought back, but there was an alternate vessel they could use. A relative species of the Pentastomida discovered in China. It had adapted to live in the nasal cavity of animal hosts, but its genetic sequence showed signs of common ancestry with the vocal cord parasites. Ontogenesis, the path of an organism to maturity, is like a roadmap of the phylogenetic evolution of the entire strain. Cypher used this to effect a reverse evolution of the modern parasite and resurrect the vocal cord parasites. They interposed a developmental mechanism to the ontogenetic stage analogous to when the relative species first appeared, the point at which it split from the vocal cord parasites, forcing its evolution down the other path, the vocal cord parasite path. The larvae this produced were the vocal cord parasites, reborn. I do not know in detail how Cypher accomplished this, but clearly they have access to high-level genetic technologies. Skullface said it was the work of a genius woman scientist, and that the relative species in question was first discovered by a group once called the Philosophers. I was tasked with modifying the resurrected parasites. He charged me with two demands. First, to add lethality to these organisms that had once lived in peace with man, by unleashing the larvae's latent desire to consume nutrients from the host's lung tissue, making them eat and eat until the lungs were destroyed. Second, to have both male and female inhabit the same host and copulate then and there only when exposed to specific pronunciations continuously over an extended time. What he would do to the Diné if I failed. I had no choice.
Okay, and the last one, I'm gonna, let's just do the last one, and then just call it for now.
Originally, the ultimate objective of the ethnic cleansing parasite project was the identification of not only languages, but of actual cultures. Language is deeply connected to ethnicity, but many languages are employed by multiple ethnic groups, and confrontation between those ethnic groups is by no means rare. If the cleanser parasites were to be a deterrent against ethnic conflict, they had to distinguish between groups using means other than pure language. The original plan called for this to be achieved by differences in the transmission vector. Each ethnic group has different lifestyle customs and eating habits. For instance, parasites living in shallow water and taken in through the skin could be used to target rice farming groups, or parasites using cows as their intermediate host would be ineffective against cultures that abstain from eating beef. But that is a lofty goal indeed. The current parasites mainly rely on droplet transmission. It would take extensive time to alter the transmission route. I eventually learned that the Ethnic Cleansers project had been shut down. It was Skullface who put it back into operation. But despite that, he told me to forget about the transmission route and just focus on language identification. I do not know why. I understand that the Chinese philosophers who discovered the relative species of parasite originally planned to develop a phonogrammic Alexia parasite. The left temporal parietal region is home to the part of the brain that identifies the phonetic symbols of the English language. They wished to create a strain that would parasitize that region and suppress its literacy functions. The brain area responsible for identifying the logographs of Chinese, meanwhile, is in the left middle frontal gyrus, meaning that even if native speakers of Chinese were infected with the parasite, the literacy would be unaffected. Old and new, east and west, there is no limit to the delusions of those in power. But this delusion threatens to become a reality. I have to do something to stop this. There must be something I can do.
Interesting. Okay, honestly, I wasn't paying attention to those. No, I was falling asleep, so. But anyway, I got it all recorded, so you guys can just either watch it or just skip this whole part or whatever. But that'll be all for today. So I know I only did one mission. And most of it was just like listening to cassette tapes, but I know. But anyway, until next time, alright? Next video I will do more missions. But yeah, I'll do more missions on my next video, so that'll be it for today, guys. So see ya.